Good morning. I guess for you, maybe it's not morning, depending on where you live in the world, or if you're not watching this live, you're watching this after it's been recorded. It's wherever you are, whatever time it is. So obviously, we're going to talk about non-duality in this video. But I've been doing a little bit of self-reflection recently, trying to figure out, what's my motivation for making these videos, because ultimately at the end of the day, it is what it is, and non-duality just simply means not two. So anytime you see a separation, it's an appearance, it's a seeming disconnection, because we're all connected. So, and I've had one, I can't remember what his name was, but I had one person comment, saying, this is a process of the self. Oh, hello. This is a process of the self letting go of oneself, or, at some point you lose the urge to talk about non-duality, and that's what apparently happens. But I don't, from this talking box, this babbling brook, I don't see non-duality as being something that you can become. It's something that you already are. And so if you look at your own life, and maybe you've come to this pinnacle of existence where there's no sense of self, and you've achieved the mountaintop, you've achieved enlightenment. In a way, I think what teachers are saying, or what people that speak about non-duality are talking about, is your viewpoint on yourself and others changes. But if you look around at the world, the mundane everyday life, let's say there is someone walking the earth at this point in time that has figured it all out, as an enlightened being. Does it change how we interact with each other every day, or online, social media, how we treat each other? Well, hello, currently undergoing a name change. And Shaug says, I hope I said that right. Yes, motivation and meaning in trying to escape the mundane because it doesn't contain motivation or meaning. So I'm assuming what you're saying by that is the idea that non-duality, or this process to try to escape the mundane because it doesn't contain meaning, which I think we give, according to the Course in Miracles, we give it all the meaning that it has, which in a sense kind of means that it doesn't have meaning. But then paradoxically, it does have meaning because we give it to it. And the fact that we are part of creation and the unmanifest, if you want to call it that, gives us the power to give things meaning, and it gives us the power to believe the illusion, if you will. Because I have a lot of ideas, especially if I'm, have some time alone, if I'm driving somewhere where I have the moment where I think this would be good to talk about, it makes sense to me. It'd be kind of a an analogy or a story that can add some value to people that are trying to seek non-duality and trying to understand it. For instance, one was kind of had to do with the idea of free will versus fate. And the short version, I would say, is the pursuit of one or the other is still the idea that you have some sort of separate will apart from the ultimate will of what is, or the will of God, however you wanted to describe it. And the other one was talking about dreams, doing this in the morning. Being fully open and honest, I'm not necessarily a morning person that wants to get up and talk right away in the morning. So this is different for me. I've been intending to do this here for a while, but I think if I do it on the weekends, maybe that's a little bit different. Because oftentimes I get started trying to make a video and I start talking about this stuff, and I think to myself, why am I talking about this stuff? And that's what you should ask yourself as well, is why are you listening to this video? Why are you asking yourself these questions? Because the simplicity of non-duality is, I guess my hope is you would hear the message and then move on to the rest of what is, or not. I guess it doesn't matter. But if you look at all of these other speakers that talk about non-duality, I could go down the list, but you probably know some of them yourself, is why do they continue talking about it? So these, or any like spiritual teacher that talks about non-duality, why do they continue to talk about something that doesn't need to be talked about? Why don't they just rest in this ultimate silence? I think part of it is that there is no silence as the idea that there's no noise or there's no talking, because whether or not you're talking or not is irrelevant, because there's still, noise everywhere else. But I think it's that underlying silence that's in everything, that unmanifest, the space between, however you want to describe it. That's the true silence. So it doesn't really matter what I'm talking about, because, let's say I'm not making a video about non-duality, I'm making a video about knitting, or, how to carve a piece of wood or something. But non-duality, the truth of non-duality would still be there. So, the question is, why do me specifically, why do I, this Russ Rat character, talk about non-duality? And so, if you watch other non-dual speakers, a lot of times, or in certain cases, they sit and kind of do a meditation during the video, which I think is good, because there's a different mindset when it comes to talking about this stuff versus talking about, I think there's maybe a different wavelength that maybe connects a little bit better between humans. But ultimately, if I were to tell you some grand story, a great analogy about non-duality, you may believe it in the moment, you may have this epiphany experience, but then that fades away, or you really start digging into it, start asking questions, and you start wondering, well, I thought I got it, I thought I understood it, but now what about this? Or I never thought about it in this way. And the yes, but comes into play. So I should just sit here and not talk and just close my eyes, but I don't know how YouTube feels about that. Jurian says, "Hi Russ, cool to see you do a live talk." Yeah, well, that's can't remember who it was offhand, said I should. There's my memory. I think for the new year that's going to be coming up or not. I think I'm going to start writing in a journal, not to like necessarily express my feelings or, kind of dig into self-reflection, more of just, what did I eat for lunch that day, or what did I wear? What did I do? Because my memory is not as good as other people in my life. And I think part of it may be focus, because I used to think I was never good at remembering names, which I just, showed that here. But I think a lot of it is just kind of the focus, because now I feel like I'm actually good at remembering people's names in the 3D world. So, but for my memory, I can't remember hardly anything, seems like. So I don't know if going through this process, when you focus on the present, you forget other things. I don't know. That's brain science. But Jurian says, oh, yeah, hi. Shaug says, yes, I'm unable to let God take over. That's why I'm listening. I think I have the power still. Let me read that one more time. Shaug says, yes, I'm unable to let God take over. That's why I'm here listening. I think I have the power still. With a smiley face. Well, that's the funny part, is you don't have the power. There's no letting God take over. I think there is a process of letting things go in a practical sense, but ultimately, I mean, you can open yourself up and be open to the idea, but ultimately, you're not the one stepping through the door, if you will. Like, in the Matrix reference where Morpheus says to Neo, I can show you the door, you have to step through. I think, the final step is you decide to open the door, and God, or what is, whatever, however you want to define it, brings you through the door. So this whole process of trying to become a non-person, or change your behavior, your habits, that's not what it's trying to do. And that was kind of the main focus of what I wanted to talk about, was when it comes to the reason why I think I talk about non-duality is because, it's like the 80-20 rule. So you want to do 20% of the work to get 80% of the results. So you really focus and prioritize your energy on what makes the most sense to get you the furthest. And I think talking about non-duality, really questioning who am I, or, what is meaning, what is truth, I think can get you a lot further from, in a practical sense, which goes against the idea that you have to do anything. But we always focus our lives on things that we have to change, that we want to improve. And you can probably relate, earlier in your life. Here's a story for you, but I'm pretty sure it happened. When you're going through school and you have a big test, let's say, and right beforehand, or a big project right beforehand, there's so much anxiety and pressure, and this is a big deal, because this is going to decide where I go to college, and what I do, with my life is going to have such a huge consequence for me. So there's all this pressure, and then you get through it, and then afterwards, a period of time passes, or a year, however long it takes, and you look back, you're like, why did I put so much pressure on myself? That was kind of silly, because yeah, it was important, but ultimately, did it really matter in the long run? No, not really. It maybe had changed some course of your life, but there's always the endless possibilities in every moment. And then maybe later you had to get your driver's license, and there's all this pressure, because if I don't get my driver's license, I won't be able to go drive around with my friends, and blah, blah, blah. And people make fun of me, whatever that is. And there's all this pressure. And then afterwards, you're like, well, that was easy. Why did I put so much pressure on myself? And then later on, it's your first job or it's your first relationship. There's so much pressure, and there's all this. It's almost like an existential threat in a lot of ways, where you feel like if this doesn't happen, it's going to be just a huge disaster in my life. And that's where I see non-duality being kind of an important topic to talk about, because once, in a sense, there's a loosening in that regard, everything else kind of seems, I guess how I describe it is there's this like groundlessness, there's this emptiness to it, where there's all of this fire and passion and movement, but ultimately underlying all of that is this stillness, or this silence, as you would talk about. And so therefore it's kind of like this whole existential threat that we put ourselves through loosens up, and as Paul Hederman says, you end up walking lightly. No, what does he say? Something like that. Traveling lightly. There you go. All right, so let's back to your questions. Currently undergoing a name change. I like that. I recently discovered Mother Mira. She gets on screen and stays silent for an hour. Yeah, I did that on one of my videos just kind of as a joke, because I have kind of dry humor. But I think there's, like Lisa Cairns, she does that when she does her live talks. And I think it's because, it puts you in a space that maybe you're more connected or more at a different brain wavelength, that you're not just really talking about surface stuff. She's magical. Oh, Mother Mira. All right. Jurian says, my memory is super poor as well. I've thought about whether it has anything to do with losing interest in the past. I think it's maybe, I guess in my experience, I could say it seems to be so, that if you focus more in the present, you're not focused on all those stories that you're holding on to, or the traumas or situations from the past, the things that you haven't forgiven. You're just kind of focused on the present moment, or the now, as Eckhart Tolle says. But I don't think that really matters. I don't think that's something that you can strive for. I mean, to some extent, I think becoming freer, you kind of lose some of your sense of who you are. But at the end of the day, I don't think having dementia is something that I'd want to have. And so having a basis, a grounding in the story, I think is a good thing. And it's a grounding to you as a separate self. But that seems to exist, and it may not make it easier for you to not try to remember anything from the past. But Jurian says, it's very funny how what is memorized and what is not. It is completely uncontrollable. I pretty much do not remember anything from my childhood. Doesn't really matter. I usually forget my forgetfulness. Yeah, I think, from, as Paul Hederman would say, we want to make this dog crap awareness. I try to make this PG for if kids watch, but this awareness that we try to exalt, because we always get confused in terms like awareness and consciousness and all this stuff. And it's, in a sense, when we're having conversations, you kind of have to define terms, because otherwise people really get confused. But this piece of awareness on an individual level, the focus, if you will, can shift. I can focus on my fingertip. I can focus on this laptop or the fan or whatever. And you can focus on different things. And I think ultimately what people want in some cases through spirituality or non-duality is to take this piece of consciousness and expand it and make it some all-knowing consciousness that I can have as a separate self. And there's ways to improve your cognitive capabilities or your psychic abilities or whatever. There's potentially ways to make those better, but ultimately you're still going to be in your sense of awareness, because I think infinity, all knowingness, isn't something that, well, it isn't something that you can have as an individual. It's something you're part of, something you are. But this idea that your separate brain functioning can have this superpower, I guess maybe for some people that happens. I don't know. For me, that's not the case. And throughout the day, I've talked about recently, wanting to write a book someday, and it wouldn't necessarily be about non-duality, because that would be pretty boring, but it'd be a story that maybe would have some elements of it. But part of me thinks, well, you should do more writing then. And it's like, well, I make these non-duality videos. It's like, well, you got to the point where it's like, well, why am I making these videos? I could be doing other things. And as I was going through that process, I was also thinking, okay, from a writing standpoint, a lot of writers, pick up on details. Like I'm very intuitive. From, if you look at Myers-Briggs, like I don't necessarily always pay attention to the manifest reality. It's kind of what's happening behind the scenes, or what the energetic exchanges are happening. That's just something I do personally. But I was thinking, okay, well, I should really get better at paying attention to what's happening in the 3D world, noticing colors, shapes, objects, and because that senses of smell, taste, and different things. And so if I were to go to write, it would be something that would be tangible, because a lot of writing is tangible. Because when you talk about these things that are intangible, if you bring them into something that's tangible, then it's easier to connect with. And sometimes I have trouble thinking of nouns. Like, what is that called again? So when it comes to your attention and your forgetfulness, there's only so much that your brain computer can hold on to and can process. And so you can pay attention to what you're focusing on, because you're probably missing quite a bit. And that's why when you talk about stories of the past, they're essentially stories, because you're only coming from your own perspective. You're leaving out so much detail, so much information, so much inner world connection that you're not even necessarily aware of. That history is a story, essentially, and there's some that are more factual than others, but ultimately it's never going to really show you all of reality, because my experience right now is sitting on the floor in a bedroom. Your experience could be totally different, than someone across the world, or someone in a different time in the future that watches this. So my awareness of what's happening is me talking to a little dot, which in your case is talking to you, and now we have more of a live connection with the chat. So that's nice, but your experience is probably different than mine. Jurian says, simple dog-ass awareness. Love how he says it. Yeah. No expectations, no disappointment is what I feel like. It's quite easy to godify yourself, especially after recognizing your nature. Yes. And that's, I guess, other than trying to bring you other ways of looking at it, different stories or analogies or concepts, and bringing them to non-duality, personalizing it, so you can connect, because there's certain things that some people will connect with and other people will be like, I don't get it, I don't understand. So they won't connect with one particular speaker, but they'll connect with someone else. And there's only a small subsect of the population that even is aware of non-duality or what it even talks about. So there's constantly new people all the time being introduced to this concept. And so finding different ways that people can connect with it. It's just how it is. It's like with anything. But I think for me, the other part of my motivation is, I think, the other trap that people fall into, other than making it some mental, mind game, is seeing these speakers, hearing what they say, and thinking that they have something that you don't, thinking that they're like a guru that has it all figured out. But they'll tell you, I don't have it all figured out. But then when you talk about not having a sense of a self, or having this eternal peace, or I've heard other speakers say, I don't think anymore. It's like, okay, great. Words just come out naturally. And that's, it's like some people are better speaking live. Like I never thought I would be making videos where I speak off the cuff and speak live. It's never been, if you listen or if you read Sally Hogshead book called How People See You, I believe. How People See You. She has a whole system called the Fascination Advantage, and my highest on her system is Mystique, which is kind of holding your cards and not saying a whole lot. So the fact that I get on camera and talk about this is kind of an interesting phenomenon. So we're at about 26 minutes. I'm going to sit here in silence. So if you have any last minute questions here, feel free to put them in the chat. I forgot to get my tea. Oh well. Well, I just want to thank everyone for participating. And like I said, I think with any sort of process is creating your own habits, creating your own, being consistent with it. Because the only way you can become an expert in anything is having intention and continuing with it, not giving up, and being repetitive with it, if you will. It's like, I've been doing learning Spanish on, see, I need the tea. I've been learning Spanish, Espanol, on Duolingo for longer than I've been making these videos, 2.5 years. I'm still not great at it, but it's something I do every day. And so if you try it for a week and you quit, then you'll never learn it at all. And so, as I'm an older individual, learning Spanish may be a little bit more difficult, but you can do anything you want. Your brain's still functioning. It's like this game when you get ads on your phone, this game that's like, you do this puzzle, and the quicker you do it, the lower your age goes. It's like, well, I don't think your brain really works like that. You don't necessarily get dumber as you get older. It could be the opposite. So, with non-duality, I guess my point is, I think right now I'm kind of in a period of apparent transition. And so I think having more of a structure, maybe doing more like a once a week live talk, and then peppering in like a recorded video at some point, probably what I'll be focusing on here going forward. But Shauk said, that's really cool that speaking happened then when it wasn't expected. Yes. People are like, well, I was born to sing. I was born to do this and that. I don't think I was necessarily born to talk about non-duality, but there you go. Jurian says, love the humor in your videos, Russ. Refreshing, especially considering the fact many teachers are sometimes very serious when it comes to offering there's nothing to get. Well, I appreciate it. That's ultimately my goal, is to some extent take even though I'm very into like mystical things, because the world is magical. You don't need to make up a story about it. It just is. So, all right. So we're about 30 minutes. So I just want to say I appreciate you participating, and until next time, peace.